Today we're just gonna rant about the Dreamcast for a little bit. I was originally gonna script this and just put all of my thoughts into like a well thought out like video essay. Or half video essay, like I wouldn't really edit it that much. Maybe I would just put pictures in here or there, and then I would just put it on the second channel. But I just thought, if I'm not gonna put much effort into like editing shit anyways, I might as well just like do this off the cuff. So hopefully this turns out good whenever I'm editing. But anyways, let's talk about the Dreamcast. Sega's final console, something that's looked upon pretty positively nowadays. It didn't exactly sell very well whenever it was new. In fact, it caused Sega to go out of the fucking console business. But most people just chalk it up to the PS2 being released around the same time. And don't get me wrong, I do not want to diminish the impact that the PS2 had. It is the best-selling console of all time and definitely fucking sniffed out a lot of its competition and just fucking ended it. Nintendo didn't do very well that generation. Xbox came in and did pretty well for a newcomer, but it still only did like, what, a few more than the GameCube, which already was kind of a flop. But if you'll notice, the Dreamcast still did so much worse than those other consoles. So honestly, I really don't know if you can blame it on just the PS2. There are a few issues that I specifically have with the Dreamcast. But here is one main point that I want to focus on right now. CDs. Around the time that the Dreamcast was coming out in the US and Japan, DVDs were becoming widely popular. It was quickly becoming the biggest format for home video, eventually passing up VHS in the 2000s. And it had loads of potential at the time, but Sega for some reason decided to just stick with CDs. I understand that going with DVDs would have been a lot more costly because of license fees, but for one, you did not have to pay for DVD support directly, although it would have helped the console a lot. That's one of the reasons why the PS2 crushed every other console. But going with the DVDs gives you so much more storage for games. You know, games were getting bigger and bigger. Sega should have seen this coming, honestly. Technology was advancing rapidly, and honestly, in just a generation after this, they already had fucking Blu-ray. Considering how fast things were going, Sega should have absolutely seen this coming and switched to DVDs. And that always seems to be a problem for consoles. The N64 had cartridges, which heavily limited the amount of third-party support that the console had. And the GameCube had mini DVDs, which that was a fucking horrible decision in itself. But you want to know my main issue with the Dreamcast? The fucking controller. Look at this shit and tell me what you think the main problem is. Okay, you done looking? You done looking? Okay, you might have noticed that there's not a second analog stick or any fucking camera buttons to be seen. In fact, there's no bumpers on the fucking controller at all. There's just two triggers. I had the misfortune of using this thing at a local arcade. There was a Dreamcast there with a lot of preloaded games, but whenever I picked up the controller, it just did not feel comfortable to use at all. But that's not even where the main issue comes in with the Dreamcast. Controllers can be uncomfortable but still work. I mean, Sony was fucking using the PlayStation 1 type of controller for like 3 generations, and that controller's not very comfortable. So in all honesty, it probably would have been fine. But no second analog stick? Are you fucking kidding me? That is actually an issue that you cannot fucking downplay. This makes a lot of games in this generation, you cannot use proper camera controls. It's fucking idiotic. A lot of games on the Dreamcast had to work around this lack of a second analog stick for some reason. To which I would just fucking say, why did you have a lack of that to begin with? Just fucking put it in. The N64 had already set a precedent at the time of having at the very least camera buttons. And I don't think that's the best way to do camera controls, but regardless, they had already set a precedent with that. But the year later, Sony had released a DualShock controller which had analog sticks on it, and a second one for a camera. This shit had already been established, so I don't get why a year later, Sega just comes along and is like, we're gonna have an analog stick, but we're not gonna have a second one or any sort of camera buttons. In fact, fuck you shoulder buttons, we're not gonna have those anymore, we're just gonna have triggers. Genuinely, Sega is fucking retarded. And also, another thing to note, I really don't think that they had fixed up their third-party relations all that much. I could be wrong, someone could correct me on that, but I don't really remember many games from the Dreamcast that were from third parties. Exclusives can do wonders, and it's why the Switch is doing so fucking well right now. But if you have only exclusives, not only that, but they're not very appealing to fucking buy, apart from the Sonic Adventure games, and there were other ones. But you know, Sega fans are already going to be clamoring to that. If you don't have something to bring in new fucking people, your console's probably just gonna fail. That's why you need third-party support. You need these major publishers. Exclusives are important too, but you also need third-party. It can't just be one. And I feel like Sega really fucking dropped the ball. Though, let's be honest, that's less of a problem with them during the Dreamcast generation and more during the Saturn, because I'm pretty sure that's when that started. Because for some context, the Saturn had released in, I believe, 1995, and it was released months earlier than it was supposed to, which ended up pissing off a lot of third-party developers that were originally working with Sega. So that's part of it too. And yeah, I really talked about 3 issues here, none of which seem like, you know, game-changing fucking things, but all of this combined with the fact that Sony was just about to release their second console, yeah, they should have done better. I did say that the PS2 was not the reason why it got killed, even though it was a killing blow, admittedly. But goddamn, should have Sega fucking prepared. Although I've really only mentioned 3 major issues here today, I think that all of these really needed to get fixed upon if they really wanted to battle against the fucking PS2. I'll contradict the previous statement that I made here. The PS2 was the killing blow to the Dreamcast, but it was only the killing blow because the PS2 was straight up a better product in every fucking way. It had DVD support, it had a controller that didn't straight up suck and actually had a second fucking analog stick, and it had the proper amount of fucking shoulder buttons. It had DVD support, not just for the games, but for fucking movies as well. It was a pretty powerful console at the time, easily beating the Dreamcast. And Sony just bested the Dreamcast in every single way. I think that the Dreamcast could have fucking survived, again, if they actually built up a good library of games, fixed up their third-party relations, didn't have such a shit controller, and actually did fucking DVD support. And I'll contradict something I said again, they should have had fucking home movie support on the Dreamcast. That would have at the very least given Sega a little bit of an edge and caused people to buy their console. And again, I say the Dreamcast was not a bad console. The decisions made by Sega whenever making the console were fucking dumb though. And I think blaming the PS2 solely whenever the Dreamcast already had a load of other issues is just Sega fans living in a fantasy world, to be honest. You can argue about my opinion in the comments all you want, but that's where I'll end things for now. Maybe I'll upload another video ranting, or maybe I'll upload an actual fucking gaming thing. I'm also planning on streaming on Twitch every now and then, so go to twitch.tv/deadmemefrog if you like this video. I'll be streaming over there every now and then. And yeah, I'll see you next time.